editor of For Harriet. So let's go ahead and talk about why I am no longer wasting any more of my time or energy debating or explaining oppression online. So I couldn't even begin to quantify the amount of my life that I've spent on the internet. Like, seriously, I have lived out my life online. And for me, engaging in digital community has been nothing short of life-saving, honestly. I have found safety and solace in being able to share my experience with racism and sexism online. And I've also found value in being able to read other people's experiences with oppression that I will never know. The internet is where I learned about transphobia. It's where I got a really good grasp on classism. And despite the fact that these conversations online can be enriching and can be priceless, they can also be disheartening and, quite frankly, traumatic. So whenever you post something online, people are going to respond. Like, that's the nature of the beast, and that's really what you want, right? Sometimes those comments can be incredible, right? Like, sometimes somebody will offer an alternative viewpoint that will completely transform your position on an issue, right? And that's important. It's necessary for growth and evolution. But if I'm being honest, for me, those types of experiences, those types of exchanges are increasingly rare to the point of being almost non-existent. Most often, I see people engaging just to be contrarian, right? Just to tell you that what you're seeing or feeling is not real, that it's a fiction, right? That your experience is invalid. And I am no longer engaging it, because when it's done maliciously, it is abusive. But often it's born out of a willful ignorance, and both of those are damaging. So the conversations around Bill Cosby this week have been, for me, particularly enraging and harmful. So I'm cashing out. That's the final straw for me. But I've been thinking about this for a long time. I don't feel the need to explain oppression to anybody. I don't feel the need to walk anybody through systemic inequality. I just am not, at this point, convinced of the benefits of holding somebody's hand through my lived experience. Now, this doesn't mean that I'm no longer going to be engaging in those tough conversations. It just means that I'm going to be cashing out much sooner. It means that I'm going to be much more selective about who I choose to engage deeply with, right? So I will approach an interaction with somebody with whom I have a deep and close personal relationship with differently than I would somebody that I don't know at all, right? Here, relationship, rapport, and, quite frankly, privilege matter. Often on the internet, these sorts of debates are not productive. They devolve into interminable back and forths that are ultimately a waste of time and energy. And I'm not the first person to articulate this kind of viewpoint. I actually really started thinking about making this decision after rereading Audre Lorde's The Master's Tools Will Never Dismantle the Master's House, where she talks about the expectation of those with less privilege to stretch themselves across the gap of understanding to those with more privilege, and how damaging that is. I have also recently read a speech given by Toni Morrison in 1975, where she talked about having to defend your humanity, right? So she talked about how continually having to defend your humanity, right? To explain the validity of your experience keeps you from doing your work. There's actually a little piece of that speech that has gone viral recently. But I've come to the realization that this is not my work. And I appreciate the people who spend their days explaining the intricacies of oppression to the ignorant. I'm not going to do it. There's a big difference between exploring your experience for the benefit of yourself or your community and doing it explicitly for those who participate in your oppression, right? I find one of those to be much more valuable. I just don't believe that the majority of people who have privilege don't understand it, right? They might not call it privilege, they might not recognize it as privilege, but they certainly understand that they have advantages, right? That their lives are fundamentally different. The same way that I don't think that people don't get rape culture, right? That they don't see the danger and the damage of double standards, right? They just accept and embrace the status quo, right? Those who want to be ignorant will remain so, right? Not because of a lack of information, right? Not because of a lack of evidence, but because it benefits them, right? At this point, we have the research, we have the histories, we have the facts and the figures, we have the biographies and the memoirs and the personal essays. If you don't have the information, you're not looking for it. So why should I be sucked into the black hole of explaining it to you? And some people feel like that's an insular viewpoint, but I actually think that it is pushing back against a disruptive status quo, right? And that doesn't mean that I'm going to be complacent or idle. It just means that I know exactly what my work is. Though I had issues with the premise of the criming while white hashtag, I do think that that kind of intervention is an important one, right? Because it is the responsibility of those who benefit from systemic inequality to take the knowledge that they glean from listening to people who are marginalized and have the tough conversations with their peers, right? People who walk through the world in the same way that they do, right? Because quite honestly, that's your job, right? It should not be our job. And I don't want to come down on people who are genuinely wanting to learn, right? Who genuinely want to do better. I just think that they tend to take up an undue amount of space in the lives and the minds of the people who have to fight hardest. And I'm not advocating for complete intellectual segregation. So last week, about a week ago, shmoney dance, last week I got a really great Facebook message from a man who appeared to be white named Jack, right? So Jack sent me this message thanking me because he reads for Harriet regularly, right? And in reading for Harriet and in being witness to the community that we have, he said that he had learned to love and understand the Black women in his life better. So not only did that make my month, right, but it affirmed what I had already been thinking. Because Jack intentionally sought out a space that centers the needs, the voices, and the experiences of Black women, he gained a fuller understanding of an experience that is not his own, right? The goal of this space is not to center the privileged, and it would be a much different and much less useful one if it had, right? So by placing us in the center, we are better able to address the needs of Black women, right? But we are better also able to provide some insight to those who would be our allies. And I think that's my work. I've come to the conclusion that that is my work, or that is a fundamental part of my work. Creating the space and using it intentionally to help us move forward. And I'm glad I've discovered it. I always love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to leave a comment, tweet me, or leave an email. And be sure to visit forharriet.com. Thanks, guys. See you later.